Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Rachel and I'm an elementary music teacher in East Tennessee. And today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics in the whole world, and that is student-directed learning in the music classroom. If you've been following me for any amount of time, I'm sure you've heard lots and lots about this, especially over on my Instagram. This is something that's really near and dear to my heart, and what I wanted to do today is kind of tell you my why story, like how I got started with this idea of having student-led instruction time in an elementary classroom. So let's start back a few years ago when I got my first job. My degree is in K-12 instrumental music. So I went to school to be a band director, more specifically a middle school band director. I did my student teaching in a middle school and a high school and kind of split my time between those two. And after I graduated, I kind of stayed on at the middle school as in kind of an assistant band director role. I did all kinds of things there, like picking out concert music and pulling kids for sectionals and doing all kinds of stuff, fundraising, you name it. I mean, if you're a band person, you know how that goes. I stayed at that middle school for about 2 years, and during this time I was interviewing for lots of jobs and trying to find anything that I can. And as a music teacher, if you're a music teacher, you know that any sort of arts job or specials area teacher, it's hard to come across those jobs. They don't come open very often. So I interviewed and I interviewed over and over and over again at lots and lots of different places. And I finally accepted a position at an elementary school. And I know you're thinking, wait a minute, you said you wanted to be a band director. So the first job that I accepted was at a very small elementary school, and it was a part-time music position. So the kicker in that is that I had never taught in an elementary music classroom before. I had actually I hadn't been in an elementary music classroom since I was in elementary music. At the time, the college that I went to did not require an elementary music methods class for the instrumental degrees. So not only had I not done any student teaching there, but I hadn't had any courses in college on elementary methods. So that presented the first problem. The second problem was that I got hired during the first week of school on a Friday. So school had already been in session for a week. I got hired on Friday and I started the next Monday. So not only did I have 2 days to wrap my head around having a job and starting a brand new job, but at that job I had no idea what I was doing because I had to figure out what content to teach. I had to figure out how to teach 5-year-olds because I had never done that before. I was very accustomed to middle and high school and the band world. So this was a complete career shift for me. And needless to say, it's a little bit scary. So as I said before, this was a really small school, about 200 kids in the entire school, and it was pre-K through 5th. I only taught music in the afternoon. So after lunch, I think it was 3 or 4 classes maybe where I taught music. So in the morning, what I did was I was in other classrooms throughout the building doing enrichment type activities. So sometimes I would take groups out and we would do special projects. Sometimes I would have reading groups, just lots of other things. So one of the classrooms that I was in was a first grade classroom, and it was a teacher that was right across the hall from me. And I spent a lot of time in that classroom, and the teacher in that classroom and I became very close friends, and we're still friends to this day. So while I was in her classroom, it was her literacy block. So she was doing reading groups and helping, she was pulling certain groups of kids to do their reading activities for the day. For the first time ever, I saw stations. And I know you're thinking, what? That's normal. But to me, it wasn't. Remember, I was a middle school person. So coming into an elementary world where stations and centers are a daily, pretty much, activity, I was completely blown away. So I walked into this classroom, and this teacher who I valued and who I thought the world of was doing this amazing thing in her classroom. She was sitting at her back table, working with a group of about 5 kids, and that was her reading group for the day. And the rest of her class, the other 20 kids, were all spaced out in the room doing their own thing. And what blew my mind was that she was not communicating with those kids at all, and they were working, and they were engaged, and they were learning. I was astounded. I remember asking her, like, how did you do this? You know, like how are they working and you're not even standing up in front of the classroom talking to them? And she was like, girl, it's stations. So from that moment, I was like, I gotta try this. I had been teaching all of my music classes, whole group, the entire time. And to say that I was exhausted is an understatement. I was spending my entire time standing in front of the class talking to them or teaching them a song or teaching them a dance. And we were trying to cram all of this stuff into one 50-minute class. And it was, by the time I got to the end of the day, I was toast because I was basically performing all day long. After watching my first grade teacher friend, I knew that I was working way too hard. I thought to myself, if they can do independent work in that classroom right across the hall, then why can't they do it in music? So let's talk about the first time I tried doing stations in my classroom. Mind you, this was still my first year teaching. I remember very vividly. It was Halloween, one of my favorite seasons of the entire year. And I thought, you know what? We're going to do some Halloween stations with 4th and 5th grade. We had been working on lots of concepts leading up to Halloween. And so I decided that I would just create some stations for them to do that reviewed the topics that we had been talking about. There were some rhythms, there was some melody stuff, just all kinds of stuff mixed in, and it was just a big review. So my 5th grade class came in that day. I had all my stations out. I was ready. I was like, you know what, we're going to do this. And even if it fails, it doesn't matter. We're going to try it. So they came in, they sat down on the rug. I explained each station, showed them what to do. I split them into groups, and you guys, it worked. They went to those stations, they sat down, and they worked. And when the timer went off, they got up, and they switched stations, and they started all over again. I was hooked. From that moment on, I was hooked. Somehow, without me trying to fit a billion activities into one class, they were learning, and they were engaged, and they were having fun, which is all I really care about in music class, is that they're having fun. And they knew what to do because, especially since they're 5th grade, they'd had years of doing stations and rotations. And so it was like second nature to them. And it was so incredible to just see it, something that I had in my head, like maybe this will work, maybe it won't. If not, it's fine. And they just did it. It was a complete 180 shift in my mindset. I thought, well, this is incredible. If these 5th graders can do it, and I know the 1st graders across the hall can do it, then this is the way we're doing music from now on. It started out as just stations, and then it slowly morphed into doing other small group activities. Fast forward 8 years to today, and I'm still using this structure in my classroom because it's been such a game changer for me. I like to call this idea student-directed learning. Now, I know I'm not the first person to coin that term, but the reason that I call it that is because my goal is that about 75% of my class, give or take, depending on the activity that we're doing, but about 75% of my class is student-led. So they are responsible and accountable for their own learning and their activities in the music room. So I've come a long way from trying the Halloween stations with that 5th grade group. Now I have a very specific structure that I like to stick to when I plan my lessons. And it's very, very simple, and I've streamlined it over the years. So let me say that my classes are 50 minutes long. So the timing breakdown that I'm going to give you for this is based off of my class time, but obviously if you have shorter classes, longer classes, you can adjust it how you need to. So the first thing that I do for every lesson is about a 10 to 15 minute mini lesson. Now this could be lots of things. This could be just me standing in front of them teaching things. We could be learning a new song or a new dance. I have the Quaver curriculum in my district, and within that curriculum there's a lot of like shorter videos that introduce concepts, and I like to use those, or sometimes not even the whole video, but sometimes just a little portion, you know, like 3 or 4 minutes to introduce something. And so I include that a lot in my mini lesson because it's a funny, silly video and it gets the kids' attention. So then after we watch that, then we talk about it and do whatever the rest of that mini lesson is. So again, that's about 10 to 15 minutes. I usually don't even go as long as 15 minutes. I try to keep it as short as possible. I had a teacher one time tell me that a kid's age, the number of their age, is also their attention span in minutes. So like if they're 5 years old, they have a 5-minute attention span. or if they're 10 years old, they have a 10-minute attention span. Now, it's not exactly scientific, but it's a really good way to think about how to plan your instructional time. The kids that I teach are not any older than 11 or 12. So if I can keep my mini lesson to 10 or so minutes, then I'm hopefully keeping them engaged and learning the whole time. So the next part of my lesson structure is the biggest chunk. So about 25 to 30 minutes is for independent work or small group work, depending on what we're doing. This could be lots of things. It could be actual stations where they're rotating around the room doing stations. It could be everybody is working on one project, but they're doing it independently. For example, my 5th graders right now are in the middle of their composition project unit. And this is a product in my TPT store, so I'll make sure to link it down below. But last week, they worked on making 8 measures of rhythms. They had practiced drawing a treble clef. They picked out their meter, and so they made all of their rhythms last week. Well, this week, they were taking those rhythms that they made in each measure and adding pitches to them. So like putting them on the staff. So my 5th graders today, while they were working on that, they actually spent more than 30 minutes. They actually spent about 40 minutes on that because they came in and they knew their next step. So they came in, I said, go grab your paper, have a seat, get started. Today there really wasn't a mini lesson in my 5th grade class. And again, that independent work time, that big chunk, your actual student-led part of your lesson can be so many things. It can be they're creating a new dance for a song that you've learned, or they are composing their own rhythms using mini erasers. There's so many opportunities. But the big thing to remember is that that's the biggest chunk of your lesson, because you want them to be responsible for their learning and for their work. The last part of the lesson structure is 5 or 10 minutes, and I like to call it a wrap up. So this could be cleaning up stations. If they're doing stations, there's always a lot of cleanup. It could be putting their papers away or turning things in. It could be used as some sort of assessment time. I try to do this at least a little bit in every class. So something as simple as putting a rhythm up on the board and we have to say it and clap it as a class. Or they have to say it to me on their way out the door and that's their exit ticket. Anything like that. The wrap-up time is used for whatever you need to do. Turn and talk to a partner. Anything like that. So just to recap that lesson structure. 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning is your mini lesson. So you're getting as much content in as you can in that short amount of time so you keep their attention span. The next 25 to 30 minutes is your independent or small group work. That's your student-led instruction, your student-directed learning. So they're working independently on something, or maybe in a small group on something. And then that last 5 or so minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, is your wrap-up. So you're doing assessment, you're cleaning up the classroom, you're getting ready to head back out to the hallway. If you're a music teacher and you're thinking to yourself, my lesson structure or my instructional time is not very streamlined, or I feel like my kids aren't really mastering this concept before I'm having to move on to the next one because I'm running out of time. This is a structure that you need to try in your classroom. Student-directed learning has been a complete game changer for me when it comes to teaching elementary music. I'm able to accomplish so much more in a short amount of time. I only see my kids, if I'm lucky, 36 times in a year for 50 minutes. That's nothing. And I have so many standards to get through and so much content to teach them. And instead of me just rambling at them all class, I'm sending them to work on their own to really get a better grasp on these concepts, to do some hands-on learning, to do some research, and really figure out their best way to learn these concepts. Because I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm hoping that it's a way to understand why I talk about this so much and why it's so near and dear to my heart. If you have any questions about the structure for your lessons or anything that I talked about in the video today, leave me a comment below, or you can find me over on Instagram, music from B2Z, the number 2. And I'm super active over there, so if you message me there, I'll definitely see it. I know this is a new concept for a lot of you, and that whole group teaching is all you really know, and I understand. I was there too. But I promise, if you try this, and if you see how just amazing it is for those kids to work independently and create music or to perform music on their own and let them be responsible and let go of a little control, which is hard for me. But if you can do that, it's going to be a total game changer for you. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I have another video coming out in a couple of weeks that's going to be talking about every nitty-gritty detail of how I plan the lessons so that they're student-led and that my kids are responsible for their own learning. I also have a blog post coming out next week about what I accomplish while my classroom runs itself. Because guys, my classroom really does run itself. Think about that for a second. Can you say that your classroom runs itself? Because I can say that. If I were to have to leave for some reason, any adult could come in my classroom and my kids would know what to do. I don't think I have to tell you how powerful that is. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because I've got some great content coming your way. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up. And guys, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.